Imagine a world where the lines between fiction and reality blur, where the fascinating drama of a TV series mirrors the gritty truths of real-life crime families. This is the allure of The Sopranos, a groundbreaking television series that not only redefined the gangster genre but also unveiled a hidden parallel to the notorious DeCavalcante family. Let us explore the intertwined tales of the fictional Sopranos and their real-life counterparts, and discover the profound impact this legendary series had on our perceptions of the American Mafia. The Sopranos television series is a truly legendary work that changed its viewers' perception of TV shows and, of course, changed people's perception of the American Mafia. Before that, the standard for gangster movies was The Godfather, with its themes of family and revenge. This was followed by Goodfellas, which showed a more mundane side of the mafia lifestyle than was previously believed. Finally, in 1999, The Sopranos was released. At that point, we saw that drama in the gangster genre could be deeper and more versatile than in The Godfather. The realism and homeliness of Goodfellas were not the standard. The Sopranos set a new bar that very few have approached so far. This is why the series has so many fans around the world, even many years after its end. However, not all of them are aware that the Soprano family from the show had a real-life mafia counterpart called the DeCavalcante family, which bore a strong resemblance. The show's creator, David Chase, has denied that he wrote The Sopranos in the image of the DeCavalcante family, but many coincidences have been brought up by members of that mafia family themselves, pointing to his obvious inspiration. If you're interested in learning who might have served as prototypes for the characters in your favorite series, what these prototypes were doing, and how much similarity between reality and the series was true, then watch this documentary about the real Sopranos. New Jersey, where the fictional and real-life Sopranos were from, is well deserving of a whole show to be made about it and its issues with local criminals. It was here that several mafia families were intertwined, starting from New York and extending down to Florida. This doesn't even count the non-Italian gangs, of which there were more than a few from the Prohibition era. However, today we're not interested in them, but in the one local mafia family now known as DeCavalcante. To be more precise, there were two local families in New Jersey for a while, one from Elizabeth Township and the other from Newark. Both were formed at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. Only one has stood the test of time, the Elizabeth family, which eventually became the Davants, while the Newark family faded into oblivion, its members dispersing to other mafia families. In the 1930s, Newark experienced a number of conflicts that the family did not survive. The first conflict involved family boss Gaspare D'Amico, who had a run-in with another mafioso named Vincent Troia. The latter had moved to Newark during those years and planned to settle there. Troia did so, apparently without D'Amico's approval. This initial conflict set off a chain of events that the Newark family could not withstand, leading to its eventual dissolution and the dispersal of its members into other families. The evolution of these mafia families and their influence on the culture of New Jersey is a fascinating subject. Understanding the real stories behind The Sopranos gives fans a deeper appreciation for the show and the realities it was based on. For those who are intrigued by the intersections of fiction and reality in mafia lore, the DeCavalcante family provides a compelling case study of life imitating art, or perhaps, art imitating life. In August 1935, Gaspare decided to get rid of his newfound insolent neighbor. A murder attempt was made on Vincent Troia, which he did not survive. 2 years later, D'Amico himself also caught a bullet. The most likely scenario for his assassination attempt was a conflict with New York family boss Joe Perfeci. Despite being shot, D'Amico survived but decided to resign as boss and leave Newark. Afterwards, the commission decided to dissolve the local family, and its members dispersed to other clans. In case you didn't know, the Commission is the Mafia's body for deciding important issues in the U.S., consisting of the most powerful bosses in the country. You can learn more about it in my video about the birth of the American Mafia. At the same time, just a few dozen miles away in a much smaller town, Newark, Elizabeth quietly contained another mafia family. It's not known who its first boss was because the organization played no significant role in those years. Most of its first members were natives of the Sicilian town Rira, located in the province of Region 2. The first known leader of the family, Phil Amari, was also from there, and he became the boss in the 1920s. He ruled this faction until 1958, then resigned and went to Italy to live out his life. He was replaced by Nick DeOrio, who was quite old himself and had to leave the boss's chair for health reasons in 1963. He was succeeded by his nephew, Sam DeCavalcante, the same one the family is named after to this day. DeCavalcante's reign is considered the family's golden age. Under him, it reached its maximum influence and economic prosperity. There was even evidence that members of the New York Mafia wanted to join DeCavalcante to improve their position. The real-life Sopranos were involved in various ventures back then. They controlled the New Jersey construction industry by running the local union. They were involved in gambling, betting, loan sharking, protection, and robbery. During the sexual revolution of the 1960s, they even entered the pornography trade. By the 1980s, various types of health insurance fraud and stock market schemes were added to that list. During Sam's era, the family was able to expand its interests from Connecticut to Pennsylvania and even partially entered New York. DeCavalcante's reign is marked by the first evidence that his family unit had influence over the local political system. Sam had ties to New Jersey Governor Richard Hughes and Elizabeth Mayor Thomas Dunn. However, DeCavalcante also made his mark on the negative side. He talked a great deal about the business in his office, which was bugged between 1961 and 1965. These conversations covered both the internal affairs of the family and the state of the mafia in the country overall. DeCavalcante was one of the intermediaries between Joe Bonanno and the Commission after Bonanno's failed attempt to seize power in the American Mafia. These recordings, made by the authorities, are also reflected in my video about Bonanno, which you can find on my channel. However, none of the recordings could directly serve the prosecutors because they were made without proper authorization. Despite this, DeCavalcante avoided a trial but went to jail anyway. In 1971, Sam DeCavalcante was charged with organizing gambling that generated a total income of $20 million a year. He served 2 of his allotted 5 years due to heart problems, and the authorities granted him parole, noting his good behavior in prison. This health issue likely contributed to DeCavalcante stepping down as boss of the family, moving to Florida, and leaving John Regai, nicknamed the Eagle, in charge. Regai was a hereditary mafioso. His father Emmanuel was close to Nick DeOrio and was one of the top labor racketeers. John's rise began in the late 1950s when he came to DeCavalcante's attention. In the 1960s, Sam promoted Regai to captain and put him in charge of union racketeering. When Sam got out of prison in 1973, he handed Regai the acting boss's chair, which John had held since the beginning of DeCavalcante's prison term. Regai continued to strengthen the family's authority established by DeCavalcante, succeeding very well until the end of the 20th century, when significant events would unfold. Regai's reign was the period during which the generation that inspired some characters in The Sopranos was taking shape. In 1990, John Regai was jailed for 12 years on labor racketeering charges. He didn't relinquish power and decided to run the family through trusted individuals, one of whom would eventually become Vincent Palermo, nicknamed Vinnie Ocean. Palermo is considered the main candidate suspected of being the prototype for Tony Soprano. From this point, we will follow the narrative of the real Sopranos through Vinnie Ocean's story. Vincent Palermo was born in 1944 in Brooklyn. He lost his father early and, by the end of the 1950s, was forced to work to help his mother feed the family. Vinnie started at the Fulton Fish Market, where he got his nickname Ocean. This line of income would remain with him for most of his life, eventually becoming the owner of a fish store. In the early 1960s, Vinnie met and soon married a relative of Sam DeCavalcante, which became the springboard for his connection with the New Jersey family. Had this not happened, Palermo might have become a member of one of the New York families, since his brother Pascal was a member of the Colombo family, and his uncle was related to the Gambino family. However, fate had it that in the late 1970s, Vinnie Ocean was accepted into DeCavalcante's family. What exactly Palermo did from his marriage to his initiation remains unknown. During those days, Palermo was virtually a ghost to the authorities and remained so until the 1990s. Palermo, during his rise in the family, took on significant responsibilities. He played a crucial role in various rackets and expanded the family's influence, making him a key figure in the narrative of the real Sopranos. His life and actions provide a lens through which we can understand the intricate dynamics of the New Jersey Mafia, paralleling the fictional tales that captivated audiences worldwide. The FBI only obtained evidence of his first serious crimes 10 years after they were committed. We're discussing several murders he committed on the orders of family boss John Riggi. The first victim was Fred Weiss, who was running a construction scam with people from the Gambino family. They had purchased the land of an abandoned railroad station on Staten Island and turned it into an illegal dump. Soon, law enforcement became interested in the case and took Weiss, among others, into custody. Additional offenses were discovered, and Weiss could face decades behind bars. Gambino boss John Gotti felt that Weiss could not be trusted and could easily become a government witness, so he decided Weiss had to be eliminated. Since Weiss also had dealings with the DeCavalcante family, the hit was a joint effort. Weiss had two homes, one monitored by the Gambino team and the other by the DeCavalcante team led by Vinnie Ocean. Weiss ended up in New Jersey, where he was gunned down by Vinnie Ocean's boys a year after the hit. John Riggi was arrested, but he would remain the boss and run the family through John D'Amato. However, there were potential rebels, namely Lizzie Larasso, who had been an underboss during the Sam DeCavalcante era and didn't seem to mind regaining the position he lost when Riggi took over. In 1991, Riggi struck first, and the team for the hit was once again led by Vinnie Ocean. After Larasso's murder, the main supporter of the idea, John D'Amato, was also eliminated almost immediately. The official reason was suspicion of his homosexual tendencies, but the unofficial reason was that he was very close to John Gotti, and his continued power could have turned the DeCavalcante family into a branch of the Gambino family, which many were not happy with. Piola was not involved in this hit but helped to dispose of the body. This real case in many ways overlaps with the story of Vito Spatafore from The Sopranos, and the life ending of someone who started running a family on the streets after D'Amato's murder is quite similar to the story of Jackie Aprile. The person's name was Jake Amari, and in 1992, he became what's called a street boss. In 1995, Jake Amari was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and 2 years later, in 1997, he succumbed to the disease. After Amari's cancer diagnosis, he stepped aside, and a dual leadership, or diarchy, consisting of Vinnie and Jimmy Piojo, was put in charge of the family. However, this situation did not sit well with another family member, Charles Maury. Maury first tried to convince the boss, John Riggi, to put him in charge. But when that didn't work, He decided to eliminate both Vinnie and Pio. Maury misjudged his hitman, Majuri, and assigned the hit to soldier Jimmy Gallo. Instead of carrying out the assassination, Gallo told everything to Van Ocean. Gallo had already taken up position outside Maury's house with a gun, but the assassination attempts never materialized on either side of the conflict. The tension somehow dissipated on its own, and it's unknown why, but neither Maury nor Pomo tried to kill each other again. Vinnie became the de facto main man of the DeCavalcante family, and his lifestyle mirrored that of Tony Soprano from The Sopranos: a wife, kids, a luxurious home, and excellent income, except without the psychological problems. Pio had a cut of the family's betting and loan sharking operations, was involved in labor racketeering and organized gambling on a yacht in neutral waters, participated in stock exchange fraud by pumping junk stocks through unscrupulous brokers and dumping them at maximum price, and tried to engage in legitimate businesses as much as possible. These legitimate businesses included a fish store and the infamous Wiggles strip club. Pio also made a deal with Siemens to distribute their cell phones to Russia and planned to expand into the nightclub sphere in cooperation with Bob Guion, the creator and owner of one of the most popular erotic magazines, Penthouse. Interestingly, Wiggles was another parallel to Tony Soprano's strip club, Vada Bing, though Wiggles was a much more famous establishment located in New York, not New Jersey. The Wiggles strip club didn't stand out due to any innovative or elite services, but rather because of the constant hype and scandals surrounding it. Residents living near the club complained about it, and there were even picket protests on several occasions. Eventually, the mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, decided to shut down the club, citing the law that such an institution should be a certain distance from schools and churches. Overall, this real-life case has several parallels with the fictional story of The Sopranos, from the power struggles within the crime family to the business ventures and lifestyles of the made men. The story provides a glimpse into the intricate and often violent world of organized crime, with its complex web of alliances, betrayals, and struggles for dominance. The Wiggles strip club in New York became a constant source of headlines and controversy due to its legal battles. The main issue was the 60-40 rule, which stipulated that an erotic club could only be classified as such if more than 40% of its space was dedicated to the sale of erotica or erotic services, with the remainder being for other types of establishments. Vinnie Ocean, the owner, had clearly delineated the required 40% area and fenced it off from the rest of the club, allowing it to repeatedly reopen despite undercover agents being caught violating the rule. These agents would come to the strip joint and try to get dancers to perform outside the regulated zone, with the funds to pay the strippers coming from the state treasury. A veritable dream job. The 1990s were a golden era for Vinnie Ocean, as the money flowed, and the power within the DeCavalcante family was firmly in his hands. This would change, however, with the release of John Riggi in the early 21st century, and the FBI's increased scrutiny of Ocean's role in the American Mafia. Soon enough, the DeCavalcante family would face its own Big Bone Pinero, a figure who would go much further than his fictional counterpart, Ralph Gino. Gino, who had never been a member of the DeCavalcante family, would become the man who gathered the evidence that led to the arrest of several dozen people connected to the organization. But Gino was no stranger to fame before his work for the government. He had orchestrated one of the most ingenious and daring robberies in the history of New York, although it was not carried out by the most intelligent criminals, which made the planning all the more impressive. The details of the case were as follows. Gino knew someone who worked at the World Trade Center, the one that suffered a devastating attack in a year that is better left unmentioned on YouTube. This acquaintance informed him that on the same day and time, a large sum of money was being transported to a Bank of America branch. This information allowed Gino to plan a meticulously executed heist, despite the less than brilliant nature of the robbers involved. The combination of Gino's strategic mind and the criminal's ineptitude made the successful completion of the robbery all the more remarkable. The Wiggle Strip Club saga, the power struggles within the DeCavalcante family, and Gino's daring robbery all serve to illustrate the complex and often lawless world of organized crime in New York during this period. The narrative paints a vivid picture of the constant battles for dominance, the ingenious schemes, and the high-stakes game of cat and mouse between the criminals and the authorities. The plan to rob the Bank of America branch at the World Trade Center was meticulously crafted by Gino. He knew that the building had an extremely high concentration of law enforcement, including New York City police, Port Authority cops, and federal agents from agencies like the Secret Service, Customs, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. However, Gino was banking on the notion that no one would dare to attempt such a brazen robbery in such a heavily guarded location. Gino recruited a team of small-time gangsters and drug addicts, Richie Gillette, Melvin Folk, and Mike Reed, who agreed to carry out the heist for a mere $20,000. In January 1998, the group successfully entered the building, bypassed the security barriers, and made their way to the 11th floor, where the money was being transported by security guards. Donning ski masks and wielding pistols, the robbers disarmed the guards and filled their gym bags with the cash. However, their triumph was short-lived. The bags were filled with a mix of foreign currencies, including francs, yen, and lira, rather than predominantly US dollars. Worse still, the robbers had the audacity to walk through the building with their faces exposed, allowing their identities to be captured on more than 50 security cameras. Unsurprisingly, the group was apprehended almost immediately, and Gino found himself facing a potential 20-year prison sentence. The FBI, however, saw an opportunity to leverage Gino's connections within the American Mafia family. They offered him an alternative: become a secret informant and help them gather evidence against the DeCavalcante organization. Gino agreed, and his first task was to contact Tommy Dora, a DeCavalcante family partner, in an effort to persuade him to speak with Vinnie about marketing the stolen foreign currency. This marked the beginning of Gino's work as a government informant, a role that would ultimately lead to the arrest of several dozen individuals connected to the DeCavalcante crime family. The failed robbery at the World Trade Center, despite its careful planning, highlighted the immense challenges faced by even the most seasoned criminals when attempting to operate in such a heavily secured environment. Gino's decision to cooperate with the authorities also underscored the precarious nature of organized crime, where one misstep could unravel an entire criminal enterprise. When the FBI initially recruited Gino as an informant, they had no idea who Vincent Poil was. All they knew about him was that he had a record of stealing shrimp years ago. It wasn't until Gino identified Poil as DeCavalcante's main men on the streets that the Bureau made him a key target for their operation. Gino's attempt to sell the stolen foreign currency to Poil was eventually turned down, citing Poo's reluctance to get involved with a case that had been heavily publicized on TV and was still under investigation. One of the main reasons Poil was willing to let Gino get close to him, aside from his reliability and reputation, was Gino's ability to turn a profit, which he had demonstrated with the robbery. Gino began spending a lot of time with a man named Joe Mella, who was an associate of Poil and worked as his driver. Gino rode along with Mella practically around the clock, taping everything he said. Mella talked a lot, and Poil considered Gino a reliable man, not hesitating to discuss business with him. The only problem Poil had with Mella was his gambling addiction, as he owed money to almost every New York family and had even started stealing from Poil to cover his debts and gamble again. For example, Mella told Poil that the loan shark was raising his rate by 1%, and Poil made no fuss about it, allowing Mella to pocket the difference. When Poo found out about this, he decided that the benefits of having Mela around were not worth the trouble he was causing, and Mela was killed. Gino then came under the wing of Joseph Scani, who talked just as much as Mela. Scani liked Gino so much that he promised to recommend him for admission into the family. However, as was the case with Donnie Brasco, a separate video on the channel, Gino was pulled out by the FBI before he could become a member of the Mafia. Ralph was pulled off the streets by the end of 1999, and just 2 days later, on December 2nd of the same year, a massive coordinated arrest took place, targeting 40 individuals associated with the DeCavalcante family. More than a few of the mobsters in this group opted to switch sides, including Vincent Poo Ocean. Ocean faced the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison, as the other informants had divulged details about all of his criminal activities, including the murders he had committed. As a result of Poo Ocean's and other defected mobsters' testimonies, a couple of dozen more people were arrested, bringing the total number to over 60. A sixth of these individuals became government witnesses, and the authorities were able to imprison almost all the high-ranking members of the DeCavalcante family, including an extended sentence for John Riggi, who was already in prison. On the other hand, Vincent Poo Ocean served only 2 years and, upon his release, entered the Witness Protection Program. His new identity was revealed in the late 90s. He is now known as Vincent Cabela and resides in Houston, where he owns several strip clubs. While he was linked to drug trafficking and money laundering, the authorities were unable to prove anything, and Cabela remains at large. The DeCavalcante family, however, has fallen apart since these events. This is evident in the fact that the family's street boss, Frank Gassi, was personally involved in extorting money from a pizzeria in 2009, while the real boss, John Riggi, who was still in jail at the time, was obviously distraught, remembering the power and influence the Mafia had held just a few decades prior. While it cannot be claimed that the character of Tony Soprano from the Sopranos TV series was a direct copy of then Ocean Cabela, the similarities are quite striking, and fans of the series have been quick to draw parallels between the two. The most obvious one is the comparison between Tony Soprano and then Ocean Cabela. Both were the bosses of their respective families, with big personalities, big families, and strip club empires. Another potential prototype for Tony Soprano is John Riggi, though the similarities are fewer, the main one being their physical resemblance. By the summer of 1999, almost a year after Gino first went out on the street with a wire, the DeCavalcante family learned that there was a rat in their ranks. Total paranoia set in, and everyone was trying to find a snitch, leading to several murders. The FBI finally decided that Gino had to be pulled out or they would get him sooner or later. Chase also acknowledged that the Genovese faction in New Jersey was used as a basis for creating The Sopranos. In theory, there could be elements of the real-life mobster Richie Bardo in the character of Tony Soprano, particularly in terms of covering up illegal activities under the guise of a legitimate waste dumping and recycling business. Furthermore, the character of John D'Ameto matches the real-life mobster Vito Spitafore's homosexual tendencies, while the character of Gary Torciano, who died of cancer, is reminiscent of the real-life gangster Jackie Aprile. Additionally, the character of Salvatore Big Pussy Bonpensiero has multiple real-life counterparts, the first being Ralph Ginran, who, like Bonpensiero, cooperated with authorities in a wiretap investigation, and the second being Anthony Russo, from whom Bonpensiero's nickname was apparently derived. The character of Paulie Walnuts was also inspired by members of the DeCavalcante family, who were caught on the wire discussing the first season of The Sopranos and believed that Paulie was based on DeCavalcante Captain Gano Vasta, who was a large, muscular individual with a similar demeanor. The character of Hesh Rapkin most closely resembles the real-life music producer Morris Lovey, who had ties to the Mafia. The parallels between the series and reality don't end there. The Satriali's pork store in the show actually existed in real life, but it was called SOS and was owned by a member of the DeCavalcante family, Joseph Jib, who used it as a headquarters for his crew. Chase also incorporated real-life mafia scams into the plot, such as the phone card scam that Big Pussy tells Forio about, which was based on a scheme uncovered during the 1998 trial of John Gotti Jr. Similarly, the storyline involving Tony Soprano paying a black activist to organize riots at a construction site under the guise of addressing working conditions for black workers was inspired by a real-life mafia scheme. In reality, the riots and strikes were necessary only so that the mobsters could extort money from the developers in order to quietly continue their work. Another similar case of using a real crime in the series was the airline ticket scam engaged by Tony Soprano, which was tied to Stephen Kaplan's case, who was tried for it in 1999. In the show, Tony also ran card games at a hotel owned by a Jewish family, which was mirrored in real life by the DeCavalcante family. The parallels between true crime and The Sopranos did not end there. Prior to the show's release, the main movie about mobsters was The Godfather, and the gangsters were eager to get acquainted with the actors, particularly James Caan, who was known to have friendly relations with several gangsters. When The Sopranos hit the screens, a similar fate befell its actors, who were often seen in business dealings with the Mafia. Some viewed this as inevitable, while others saw it as working in the actors' favor. For example, actors Tony Sirico and Vincent Pastore were friends with Colombo family capo James Clemenza. Sirico's case was not surprising, as he had been associated with the Colombo crime family in his youth, with 28 arrests and a prison stint. However, he was not the only actor on the show with a shady past. Tony Burrows, who played Larry, knew John Gotti's associate Paul Vario in his youth and was convicted in 2011 for hiring Gambino family members to collect a debt. Michael Santini, who played Frank Culinane, spent years in prison for aggravated assault and was charged with the murder of a Hispanic drug dealer after his death in 2001. Furthermore, Frank Vallelonga, the actor who played Carmine Lupertazzi, although not imprisoned, worked for a long time at the famous mafia club, Copacabana. Surprisingly, he was also the inspiration for one of the main characters in the movie Green Book, as he accompanied the black musician Don Shirley on his tour through some racist states. Other notable actors with criminal connections include Vincent Pastore, who played Big Pussy and was charged with assaulting his girlfriend, and Lilo Brancato Jr., who played Matthew Bevilacqua and went to prison for attempted robbery resulting in a police officer's death. The Sopranos is undoubtedly the best series about the American Mafia and one of the greatest crime dramas of all time. The show's uncanny parallels to real-life events and the criminal pasts of its actors serve as a testament to the authenticity and depth of its depiction of the underworld. As this video has revealed, the lines between fiction and reality are often blurred when it comes to the world of organized crime. If you found this exploration of the secret world of Mafia titans and their connections to The Sopranos as captivating as I have, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling insights into the hidden realms of power, greed, and violence that lie beneath the surface of our society. There is always more to uncover in the shadowy domains inhabited by these modern-day godfathers. Hit that subscribe button now, and join us on this unforgettable journey into the heart of darkness.